Hello everybody and welcome to Gene's Reviews from a regular dude, where I do trailer reactions, I react to YouTube videos, I review YouTube channels. Basically, I just do whatever the hell I want. We are accustomed to time moving from past to present to future. Yet is time always linear? Here are true stories of experiences of time and space anomalies. The first-hand accounts include time travel, time slips, and encounters with other dimensions. Enjoy. Dimension shift in Tacoma. Gary went to the theater to check the time, but lost time. I was walking in downtown Tacoma, Washington one evening around 9 o'clock. I was on my way to meet a friend at a certain intersection. The year was 1976. I was enlisted in the U.S. Army and was stationed at Fort Lewis. I remember it was the month of April. As I was walking, I started wondering what time it was, so I looked around for the nearest store where I could find out the time. I looked across the street and there was a walk-in movie theater. I figured that was as good a place as any. Then the weirdest thing happened. I started to cross the street, and the next thing I knew, my vision was clearing up and I was standing in front of the ticket counter inside the theater lobby. I had a ferocious headache and my legs felt very unsteady. I recovered a little, but the headache was it was something else. I bowed and started rubbing my forehead. After a minute or so, I heard a gasp. I looked up, and there was this pretty girl on the other side of the counter with a surprised look on her face. She asked me how I got in. Well, with the throbbing pain in my head, I looked at her and didn't know how to answer her. I was confused. I started walking toward the counter, and she backed away. Now she had a scared look on her face. She asked me again how I got in. I looked at the wall behind her. There was a clock hanging there. I started to mutter, "What time is it?" She then told me I had better leave or she'll call the police. I felt so weird. It's hard to explain. I felt like I had broken through into a territory that I didn't recognize. I stood there for a few minutes. That's when the girl went into the back room. I could hear her talking to someone. I turned around and started to walk toward the entrance. That's when this big guy came out of the back room, walked around the counter, and before I could say anything, he grabbed me by the arm, pulled me toward the entryway, unlocked the door, and shoved me outside. He told me to get out of there and went back inside. I still couldn't figure out what was going on. I stood there, looking around, rubbing my head. Then it dawned on me. The time on the clock read past midnight. I looked back at the theater. It had the closed sign on the front door. The girl and the guy were still there looking at me. Then the big guy opened the door and warned me that if I didn't leave that instant, he was going to kick me in the butt. So I started to walk away, still confused. And as I was walking, I heard the guy say, "I don't know how you got inside with that door being locked, but you better not come back." Well, the headache eventually went away, and I never did meet my friend. Future City. Rick and Daisy encountered a futuristic city. It all began when Rick and I were going to a friend's house last September. We were driving Rick's beat-up old truck, and the drive went smoothly for about 45 minutes. Suddenly, the truck's engine died, and Rick and I were stranded on a deserted highway in the middle of the night. We were surrounded by both sides of the road by cornfields that stretched into the distance. Rick began a desperate effort to restart the truck and fix the broken engine. He tried to fix the truck in vain, but nothing seemed to work. Rick finally gave up, and we decided to walk to the nearest town, 2 miles away, to find a payphone to call our friend. We walked for what seemed like hours, and the town was nowhere in sight. However, just when desperation was about to grip us, we saw a light. A gloriously bright light, shining over the steep hill ahead of us. We ran up the steep hill that blocked us from the light and were flabbergasted by what we saw. Just over the hill, Rick and I saw what could only be described as a futuristic city with lights streaming out of every window of the massive metallic towers. In the middle of the futuristic city was a huge silver dome. I stared at the city, stunned, until Rick elbowed me, which pulled me out of my trance, and he pointed to the sky. Hovering above the city were hundreds of hovercrafts. One flew towards us with amazing speed. Rick and I were so scared that we took off running back to the broken-down truck. I never looked back, but I felt someone watching me the whole way. When we got back to the truck, it started without difficulty. Rick and I took off as fast as we could in the opposite direction. We never went back or spoke of it again to this day. Hospital space-time confusion. My wife and I live in the deep woods of East Texas, near a tiny place called Mount Sylvan. I had been having some medical tests done at a hospital nearby. I went for testing 3 days in a row, always with the same routine. I parked in the same small parking lot, walked through the double doors leading to the first door, cardio testing area, turned right at the gift shop, and signed in at the desk. I always exchanged some casual conversation with the same young and very pleasant blonde receptionist. There was a small sitting area across from her desk, with a door leading to the phlebotomy, blood drawing lab, right behind her cubicle. The door to the lab was always open, and the sight of the patient sitting in the exact type of chairs, even the same color that I saw my late mother sit in for her chemo treatments, was just too gut-wrenching. She died a year ago. I even heard a patient in the lab comment on the new chairs, and a nurse replied that the hospital's oncology department had donated them. I decided to sit across the hallway anyway. Last Friday, my wife went back to the hospital with me to hear the results. She had never been there before. Usual routine. We parked, walked in, turned past the gift shop, and there was no check-in area. I stood there and I stared in total shock. No desk, no chairs, no blonde receptionist. And the door to the lab was on another wall. The other sitting area was just as before. I started to walk up and down the hall searching for my check-in area, but it was nowhere to be seen. A doctor walked by, noticed my confusion, and asked what I was looking for. When I told him that the place I had checked in for my tests was missing, he laughed and said that it had been moved to the second floor 3 years earlier because they needed more space. Thank you, everybody. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, #MeanGene. Check out my merch down below if you get a chance. And you know what? I will see you next time.